Daf Chaf Amud Aleph will begin Daf Yud Tes Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Rav Nachas L'Tamon. Rav went down to Bovel, Chamson, Mekilim v'Chamar Alei. He saw people that were being Mekel and Machalos Asuras, and then he was Machmer on them. He was Machmer on them to strengthen them. What did he see? What was the Maisa? Chad Banash Azel, a certain person went. So there was a mice where a certain person went, and boy, Mishizga as iskufte begainara, and he wanted to wash his meat on the river. So he was on the side of the river, and he was washing his meat. And he forgot some of the meat, and he went away. So he left it, and it was left unattended. Chazar boy Mizbina, and he came back to take it. Amrlei Rav Osalach. Rav says, this meat is also for you. Because then because I will say, Dahi Shatav Nar, that the meat that you had, which was kosher meat, but the meat that you had and you put to wash in the river washed it away. And the river swept and brought other piece of meat, was washed ashore, was washed and put on the bank. So therefore, this is a case of Basash Nisalm and Ayin. Your meat was left unattended. How do you know that it was the same meat? Perhaps the river washed it away, and this brought and washed and swept over here another piece of meat which was not kosher, so therefore he answered it to him. Another mice says, a person was walking the street carrying some meat. And a vulture came and snatched it away from him and threw it down in a different place. Chazar boy Me'esbina, he went to this other place to take the meat, to bring back the meat. Amar le Rav Asalach. Rav said the meat is also similar type of inyan. What was pshat? Because he said, Amar because I'll say really what the bird had. The bird had basar nevela in his mouth. Now, when it came, it snatched away your meat. It dropped the nevela that was in his mouth. So what now you're finding now, the piece of meat that you're picking up now, was a basar nevela, not your piece of meat. So I'll say that he was carrying the nevela, he threw it down, and what he took was the piece that was yours. He took the other piece, which was your piece. So really, what he dropped over here was a nevela that it had in his mouth. It took your piece, and it deposited this piece, which is also. Another similar mice, Gino Shat of Zikin. The Gino River washed away some jugs of wine. Also, the Maisa came in front of Rabbi Yisrael bar Elazar, and he said, "V'amar yachmun shapaya kitrain." The people that pour the wine into the jugs, when they pour the wine into the jugs, then they make a knot. They should examine their knots and to see if that's the particular knot that they make, and then that will be a siman that it's the wine that they poured in, which was kosher. But otherwise, we'd have to be choshesh that it is stam yain or yain nesach, and the wine would be aser. Another similar mice, nekunika ishtacha bekanishta the bully. A wine container was found in the shul called the bully shul. Also of the community of Rabbi Yirmiyah, mice came before Rabbi Yirmiyah. He said, "Ama is hakmon sukeraya ivirason." He said they used to mark the containers with red dye as a siman. So if they can identify the siman, the red dye as theirs, then it's mutter. Otherwise, we would have to be chayshish that it's a different wine and it's aser. Gedi tzalishtach b'srate de gufta. A roasted gedi kid was found in the streets of Gufta. V'tiru mishum shnei dvarim. And they were mater on account of two things. Meaning there's two chashashas here, there's two reasons to aser it. They were mater for both things. One is the mominus. Maybe it belongs to somebody else. There's mitzvah to return the aveda. And the second is the balsa shnesamel and ayin. Perhaps this meat is not a meat that's kosher. Perhaps the meat is also. Now, they were mater on both accounts. They were mater. Mishum mitzia, on account of the mitzia, o mishum roi mahal chidrachim, and on account of the balsa, that's mutter, that as far as machol sasuras, because they went basar roiv, and most of the travelers were yidden, and therefore it was put into a chazaka of kashrus. So the Gemara explains. Mishum Metzia, it's mutter Mishum Metzia, he's allowed to keep it, he doesn't have to return it. Mishum Metzia, the time because we learned, Hamatzal Miyad Ha'ariyah Miyad Ha'gai, is something which is presumed to be lost and will not be found. So a person is miyayish. So therefore, if a lion snatches something, the owner assumes he's not going to get it back. He's miyayish. He's miyayish, and therefore the finder can keep it. Or Miyad Ha'gai, or from troops that are coming to pillage. So a person assumes he's not going to get it back from that. You don't have to return the invaded mishunas hayam mishunas hanor, from the overflowing of the yam, of the lake or the rivers, or where there's a large thoroughfare or a large plaza. There's a lot of traffic going by. There's so many people. The finder can keep it because the owners, they give up, they're miyayish. So therefore, you can keep it. Here also, in this case of the shul, they allowed him to, and rather than the thoroughfare of Gufta, they allowed him to keep it because it was similar to this case of the Srachin Platya. Now, on account of Machol Suras Mishum Reiv Mahalchei Drachim Mishum Shchitas Nochri. As far as the Machol Sasuras, they were not Chayshes Mishum Shchitas Nochri because most of the people were Yidden. And Lamaisa, Ishtakach, Min the Beis Rebbe. And Lamaisa, it was determined that this originated from the household of Rebbe. So therefore, you see that the psak, that it really was kosher. Another similar incident, Igol the Gufna Ishtacha Bepundaka, the Levi, a round cheese, a block of round cheese was found by where Levi was staying. And again, there were matter on both of these accounts. Mishum Metzia, Mishum Roiv Mahalchei Drachim. They both in terms of the Mominus and of the Machol Sasuras. Mishum Metzia, the Tani, like we just learned, Hamatzal Miyad Ha'gai Miyad Ha'ariyah, Mishunas Hayam, Mishunas Hanohar, Misrat Yigdal Plat Yigdal Harel Shaloya. The finder can keep it. He doesn't have to be machris. There's no din of Shavas Aveda, Mipnei Shabal Misyashim, because the owners, they give up their Misyash. So therefore, it's hefker, he can keep it. Mishum Roiv Mahalchei Drachim, Mishum Gavinas Nochri. There's no Isser over here. Mishum the cheese of a Nochri. The Gavina, the cheese of a Nochri, is also, because they're, generally speaking, they used to coat it or preserve it with a machol sasuras, with the rennet of a chazer or other machol sasuras. Gvinas nochri is also, but over here it's mutter because most of the people who travel are yidden, and therefore we can assume it came from a yid. And lamaisa, where did it originate? V'ishtakach min the Rebbe Yaisi. And in truth, it was Lamaisa we found it was determined that it originated from the house of Rebbe Yaisi. Omar Rabbana Kumi Rebbe Yaisi Va'ana Chamya Rabbanan Machrizan. He says, nevertheless, I see that the Rabbanan, when they do find articles in these areas, they are machris. They do make hachrozan. They do attempt to be mekayim the mitzvah Shavas Aveda. They announce it, proclaim it, and they try to return it. Amar le'at in avyasa mashkach lo inasad. Right, he said to Ramana, that means to say that if you found it in a public place, that you would not keep it, you would return it. Rabbi Yoina v'chloi Amar Kain. Rabbi Yoina, your father didn't say that. Ella Amar halavai kanashkach nashkach min piyuso lagav. He said, if we found a lost object, he said halavai, that we would find it from where the intersection is and within, meaning where the public goes, where it's a public place, so that it could be kept, we could keep it. But afilu kain ashkach v'lein nasav. Even so, when he found the lost article, he would not keep it for himself, he would be machris. So there's a difference in machlis and Rishayim. Who's it referring to? Is it referring to Ramana or referring to Rav Yaina? Zok the Mishnah. If it was an animal was found within the proximity of Yerushalayim, between Yerushalayim and a city called Migdal Eder, the city that was from the outskirts of Yerushalayim. So the Rashbam says it's Beis Lechem, Ukemidos L'chol Ruach, and that same distance in every direction. So if it was, for instance, if it was 5 miles from Yerushalayim, then an area 5 miles all around Yerushalayim, or 2 miles, then an area 2 miles around Yerushalayim, that whole area, we say it's within the confines of Yerushalayim, the outskirts of Yerushalayim, and therefore we say, since most of the animals in Yerushalayim are korbanos, these also are deemed to be korbanos. So therefore, what do we say? Zechorim, if they are males, oilos. A korban oila comes only from an animal which is a zohar. So if they are zechorim, if they're males, we assume that they're oilos and treated as oilos. The kevas, if shlomim, but a shlomim can come from also not only zechorim but also from the kevas. So if it's the kevas, we treat it as shlomim. The Gemara will deal with this. Why do we say davke shlomim? Why do we say that zechorim are oilos? Well, if a shlomim can come from zechorim or the kevas, then why is it zechorim davka oilos? Maybe the zechorim is also shlomim. So we'll see in the Gemara. From Yehuda, he says in a similar vein, royal psachim. He says if it's an animal which is roy for korban pesach, meaning it's a zachar within a lamb or a goat within the first year, then we treat it as a korban pesach. If it was found within 30 days of Pesach. In 30 days of Pesach, people are Isaac in and preparing for Pesach and for the Korban Pesach. So many of the animals are designated as a Korban Pesach. So then if he finds it within 30 days of Pesach, if it's a royal Pesach, it's treated as a Korban Pesach. Now, when you bring a korban, oil, or you bring a korban shlomim, you have to also bring the sochim, which is the wine and the mincha that accompanies it. So the person that would bring the korban, he would therefore also be mechuyev to bring the sochim. And if he didn't, they would be mamashkin, they would take a collateral to ensure that he does, in fact, bring the nesachim. But the people who found these animals, they couldn't afford or didn't want to spend the extra money for nesachim, so they would just leave it and run away. So therefore, to rectify that is kino besin shu nesacheh boy mishal tzibor. They made a tanai and they said the nesachim in this case, the finder does not have to bring the nesachim. The funds for the nesachim come from the tzibor, comes from the community. So this is one of the takanas that Bezdin made, that things should come from the tzibor. This is one of them. They also are misakin that a nachri sheshal chaylosa medina sayam, and nachri is entitled to bring a korban. Ish or marba nachri, that he can also bring the dar and the davis. So a nachri that brings an oil, that sends an oil of medina salah ayam v'shalach ima nesachim, and he sent the nesachim with them krev mishloi. Then he comes from his own funds. Then we use the money that he sent for the nesachim to buy the nesachim for his korban. But if he didn't send the money for the nesachim, we say that it comes, even though it's a korban of a nachri, the funds for the nesachim come from the money of the tzibor. If a ger died, he is makdish an animal, he's a makdish animal for korbanos. And if he ne'ach zevachim, if he also designated the money for the nesachim, so that's where the nesachim come from. But in lav, but if he wasn't makdish the money for the nesachim, meaning even if he left over money, but he wasn't makdish specifically the nesachim, well, if he died and he doesn't have yarshim, it's hefker, so therefore the money doesn't belong to him anymore, it doesn't belong to his estate anymore, then they were masakin that the money for the nesachim should come from tzibur. Another Tanai was the Tanai based in who Al Kohen Gadol Shemeis, Kohen Gadol who died. Now the Kohen Gadol, he brings every day, he brings his mincha. He brings from a sarn of flour. He brings from it the chavitin. Half of it is your makriv in the morning, half of it in the evening. So if the Kohen Gadol died, and therefore they made a tanai shtei minchos krevim v'shel tzibur, that the mincha, that they used the money of the tzibur to continue being makriv the mincha of the Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishal Yarshim. Rabbi Yehuda says, though it doesn't come from the tzibur, the Yarshim, who Yarshin is to say, the money comes from there to bring these korbonei chavite Kohen Gadol. U'shlema haisa kreva. Now the Kohen Gadol himself, when he's makriv, so as we mentioned, it's half in the morning, half in the evening. It's the chavitin, it's made a minchas machas, half in the morning, half in the evening. But after he died, even though we continue bringing the korban, but it's not brought in segments and portions, it's all brought sholem, it's all brought all together. The next Tanai was al melech v'al haitzim shiva kanam neoisam, that the salt and the wood that were hektish, that someone was makdish salt and wood, that there's a Tanai Bezdin that even though it's hektish, but the kohanim could make use of it, meaning they could make use of it for their korbanos, that for their own korbanos they can make use of it. It's not considered mi'ilah. Another takon is vala parash lo yemoel ba'afra, that the para duma, when they burnt it, they have the ashes. There should be not considered. It's not considered the use of the ashes is not considered mi'ilah. It's not considered mi'ilah of the misuse of hektish, which would require a korban and a payment. There's no mi'ilah. The next takon is valakinim apsulu shoabois mishal tzibor. The people who had to bring the kinim, the birds, for the kapor. For instance, a woman who is a yeledes, she has to bring a bird, she would bring her money, she would bring it in and deposit in one of the shayfers. Then at night they would ensure that all the money that was used to be makriv the korbanos, so that the woman can be assumed that she had her tara and that she could eat kosher. Now, if it turned out that there was any deficiency, it turned out that the money was lost or the birds got possible, they had to replace it to ensure that the woman would have her tara. So they made a tanai that if that was the case, you had to have a replacement. They don't even know who the woman was, perhaps that her korban was possible. They made a tanai that it had to be replaced. The money to replace it and to buy the new pair of korbanos of the birds came from the tzibur. Rav Yomi Masechet Shekalim. He says no, it doesn't come from the tzibur. The person who had the right, the concession to supply the kinim, the birds, for the Beis HaMikdash, it was also part of the arrangement and part of that deal that he would have to provide the replacement birds in case of psulas. So the Mishnah said that if you found a zochar, you found it in wandering around in the outskirts of Yerushalayim, we treat it as an oila. Now, why should we treat it as an oila? It could also be a shlomim, because a shlomim can also come from a zoch, from a male. It says, what it means to say is that not that you're makriv it itself as an oila. It says it's coming to be mechayev the person to bring the monetary equivalent. So meaning it could be a shlom, and we don't know. What it means to say is that we have to then ensure that it is used as an oila. Therefore, a person has to bring 2 piles of money to the equivalent value of this animal. And he says, if this animal is an oila, then I'm being redeeming it, I'm being paid on this money, and this money will be used to bring it as an oila, as for a korban oila for this one. Now, if this animal in question really is a shlomim, then I'm using the money should be used to redeem it, and it should be for a shlomim. The other pile of money is if the first pile of money is ending up to be an oila, then it'll be this one will be for shlomim. If the first pile of money is a shlomim, this one will be an oila, and that way ensures that you're going to be makriv the korban oila. Now you're redeeming the animal. You're redeeming the animal without a mum. Now, even according to Rav Meir, who says you can be poida without a mum, but that's only b'di'evet, are we going to tell a person l'chadchila to be poida the animal even though there's no mum? Ella hilchu behem acharoy. He says no. Rather, what it means is you're mark of the animal itself. You're mark of the zocher itself for an oila because you go basaroy. Most of the animals of the Zacharim are oilas, so you can assume that it's an oila. Most of the nekevas are shlomim, you can assume it's a shlomim. Elahilch v'macharayiv. Im arayiv Zacharim oilas. Im arayiv nekevas is if shlomim. If most of the Zacharim, if we have a suffix, we go that we say that most of the Zacharim are oilas and most of the nekevas are if shlomim. Right, the Gemara, ve'enu shlomim boimen Zacharim and nekevas. Do the shlamim not come from both Zacharim and Nekevas? Shlamim come from both. So how can you assume that most of the animals are Zacharim? So therefore the Gemara says, he says rather what you do is you wait till you get a mum, you wait to get a mum, and then you're makravit. So in a similar type of way, as we said earlier, you wait till it gets a mum. You bring two other animals. You say, if this animal was a oila, then you put it on this animal A, and it should be an oila as a replacement. And animal B is be a shlomim. If the animal that had the mum was a shlomim, you put it on this animal A, which would be a shlomim, and animal B will be an adova for oilas. And that way you ensure that you're makravit as an oila. Omer of Zeriah says another alternative is, he said, we don't need to do that. He says, just like we said beforehand in the Mishnah earlier, that we said if there's leftover excess money, it's a Tanai Bezin, that the leftover money that is left over should be your makravit as an oila. So just like we said there, that if there's leftover money, we use the leftover money, that the Tanai Bezdin, that even for a chatos, that leftover money is, you're going to be makvid as an oila. So therefore we say over here also, Kain atmar oiv hache, Tanai Bezdin hu ala oivdesh, oilas. It's also a Tanai Bezdin that we say that it's a condition of the original hektish, that you're makdish, that if it's lost, we say that that this animal lost, that it was huktish to begin with, to be an oila. So even if it was a shlomim, but it's a condition of its original hektish, that if it gets lost, no, it shouldn't be designated as a shlomim, it's an oila. So therefore you can be makravit as an oila. So he said that, is this not ein zemezid? He said, is this not a case, ein zemezid? Isn't this a misuse, yet you're intentionally switching it from perhaps a shlomim to an oila? Meaning, even though we said it by the money, but you see this is the animal itself, that it has kedushas aguf. And are we going to say that if it was a shlomim, you can now transfer it, b'mezid, you can transfer it to an oila? No, it's not mezid, because just like we say it by money, even though this is the animal itself, it's a condition to begin with that if it ever gets lost, that even if it was hokdash as a shlomim, that it's a Tanai Bezin to begin with, that even makdish as a shlomim. But if in case it gets lost, it shouldn't be a shlomim, it should be an oila. So therefore you can be makravit as an oila.